Alrighty. Hey babes, welcome back for episode number 4 of the Babe That's Bonkers podcast. I'm your host, Kaylee Faria, and I am super duper excited to have you here. Today's going to be a fun one. Today we are talking about the hippie ways because I very much identify as a hippie just based on my lifestyle. So yeah, I'm going to let you know what I mean by that, because that could mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people, but honestly, it's probably exactly what you think it means. We're going to be chit-chatting about hippie values, hippie activities, hippie purchases, choices, all those types of fun things. But first, I am here with a life update for you. Per usual, in real time, Halloween recently happened last week. And it was a really good time. I did make beef stew. As I said, I decided to switch things up a little bit. I've just been making a lot of different roasts and such, so I just want the flavors to feel different. Whenever I did a chuck roast, the next time I did a pork roast and I switched up the veggies to bring it different flavors. And I didn't want to do just my regular chuck roast concoction, but just with stew meat instead. And luckily, I had a lot of vegetables in the house, so it felt really nice to just be using what I have type of thing. But I ended up using a spice mixture that is very common in a Portuguese beef stew recipe, and it was amazing. It was delicious. It was so nostalgic. If you're not familiar with Portuguese cuisine and whatnot, there's a huge population of Portuguese people around my hometown, kind of scattered throughout California. I guess those islanders just, really prefer to be along a coast or something like that. Appeases their natural senses or something. Who knows? But essentially, growing up in my little Portuguese community, they would have this meal called sopas a lot, which is essentially a beef stew with cabbage, sometimes potatoes and carrots if it's a fancy one, but usually just cabbage, meat, and the stew juice broth, and you use that to soak the bread, so it ends up being a soggy bread, which sounds gross in theory, but it is actually so delicious. Soggy bread's great as long as it's with something with flavor. You don't want soggy bread because you spilled water on it. That's not a good time. But anywho, all to say that the meal was very good. It was very nostalgic. The leftovers were amazing. Stews and soups and those saucy types of things that start with the letter S, seem to just kind of get better and better as time goes on, as the flavors marinate and mingle with one another. So that's always a really fun time because a lot of the time, I was thinking this today as I ate a breakfast burrito, actually, because it was a leftover breakfast burrito. And there are just so many foods out there that are really just good whenever they are fresh and hot. But that stew wasn't one of them. Gave us many good meals. It was a good time. So I highly recommend, just even now that it's just the fall season, it's okay if you didn't do it on Halloween like I told you to. It's okay. But yeah, that was delicious. Halloween was a good time. My boyfriend and I ended up dressing up like Naruto and Ramen. If you have watched the show, then you will understand. If not, then you probably just think that we're a bunch of goofy goobers, but that's okay, because that's kind of the point. We had a little Halloween party with some friends, and they're the type of friends that you just appreciate being silly. You know what I mean? It wasn't the type of Halloween party where we were gonna, I don't know, be embarrassed for being funny type thing. It was very much a nice safe space for that kind of thing. So it was fun. It was an enjoyable Halloween. Next on the life update is just that it is actually so cold here these days out in Arizona. I have been cold. It is time for me to rotate the winter wardrobe in. Thank goodness for this little jacket thing. I've been wearing it every single day. It's a lifesaver. It's kind of nice sometimes throughout the day, and I like being cold whenever I sleep. I would much rather sleep cold than warm. I think that's fairly common. And yeah, it's really just like the mornings or being outside, like to let the dogs out first thing in the morning. So chilly, so chilly. I don't know how people with like real cold winters survive. I am definitely meant to be here in Arizona, where it's medium cold because it's cold enough for me. However, this has introduced new plant thoughts as I have been wandering into my garden. Whenever it's hot, I can just very easily just water everything every day because I know all of my plants are going to dry out for the most part because Arizona's very hot, dry, and toasty. That's just how it operates, you know? Now that it's winter, the plants aren't drying out as quickly, so I don't have to water as often, which is nice, like chore-wise, but also now I don't have a for sure, like, built-in safety net to not get root rot in case I overwater. So it is kind of nice that with the seasons change, with the change of the seasons, I can just kind of like get back into that observational mindset when it comes to gardening, hanging out with my plants and all of that, just learning how they behave. Because honestly, a lot of them weren't around last winter, and I'm going to have to figure out how they like to hibernate or whatever throughout the season so that they can survive and make it another year with me. But if not, it's okay. That just means that plant was not meant for me. I think we should all really embrace just, you know, as plant people, like sometimes you're just going to kill plants. Doesn't mean that you don't have a green thumb or that you couldn't develop one type thing. It's just a process of getting to learn them. And every plant is unique in its personality and it's like in the way that its needs met type thing. So it can be really tough. Don't be hard on yourself. Just keep trying, kill more plants, and eventually some will not die. And that's how you know which ones are meant for you. Last little life update. I just really want to say that I'm getting such a kick out of hanging out with you guys and just kind of doing little brain dumps and sharing how my brain works, I guess you could say. It's almost a form of journaling for me, which is very vulnerable, but also very cathartic. And I'm just super honored to see support from some people that I maybe haven't talked to in a long time. And, you know, I definitely still have fond memories of them. I'm very much a big believer in when it comes to friendships, especially as an adult. Sometimes you just have to accept that there will be long chunks of time with little to no communication, but you just have to be willing to always pick up where you leave off and just not have hard feelings type of things, and appreciate that we all just have different paths in life that are unique to our beings and our personalities. And that's something that is really, really cool. And something that's extra cool is just the social media stuff, so we can share these things with one another and still be a part of it without, I don't know, things just don't get lost in the inconvenience of being far away from one another now that social media is a thing, which I think is super duper cool. Just this whole like podcast thing and connecting with people has just reminded me of the like purpose, or at least what I think the purpose of social media is, which is just to be able to connect with people out in the world, which is really wonderful and really beautiful. So I just wanted to share that. It's been really fun. It's been really cool. Thank you for your support. I hope you are having fun, learning something, or feeling entertained of some sort. So that's all I have as far as the life updates go today. So we are going to jump right in to the meat and potatoes of the episode, which is the hippie ways. Bum, bum, bum. So first up is hippie values, which is not only like my take on what it means to be a modern day hippie, because I do think there is kind of a resurgence. I think that, you know, the hippies were out and about in the 70s, so they say, and I think that just with like society doing its thing, changing and evolving the way that it is, there is simply just like a new age of hippies appearing in society. But these hippie values are not only what I believe a modern day hippie is, but it's also a lot of just what I believe and what my values are in this season of life, at least until I change my mind as I learn and grow, as I attempt this whole life thing. It's pretty crazy, but cool also. Everything I will be talking about today will probably be repeated at some point because these are simply the repeating themes within my life. Yeah, just know that I might end up talking about a lot of these topics more, doing a deep dive or something like that, because I have a lot of opinions and a lot to say and only so much time. So yeah, I just might be doing a deep dive on some of these topics eventually, as they are the repetitive themes in my life and whatnot. So deal with it and let's have some fun and just get into it. So the first value is openness / acceptance. Kind of the main theme with this is that there is space for everyone. Like, we are all unique as human beings. We have our own opinions, we have our own thoughts, we have our own paths to take in life, and that is simply okay. Like, it's okay that we are different from one another. And in fact, it's, my apologies for the dog snoring in the background, but it's one of the things that makes life really, really cool. We're all different and we're here to complete different purposes, and that's really, really cool. And there is space for all of us to coexist together. This kind of ties into the next one, which is, just accepting that we are all human. This is kind of my way of attempting to banish misplaced shame. That was kind of a hard sentence to say. I think that growing up with Christianity kind of leaves a lot of room for shame within these different communities, just kind of a lot of judgment happening at different times and places. And that has been something that has been personally really hard for me to overcome. But just kind of accepting that I'm human and a lot of the things that I do and feel and think and believe are normal and human. Everything that's going on for the most part is natural, not out of the ordinary, nothing to feel shameful about by any means. It's just been a journey to adopt that thought process, and that's why it has ended up being one of my values, you could say, as a hippie and whatnot, is just being super accepting that we are just human and things happen and we feel things and yada yada yada. You get the picture, I think. The next hippie value I have is valuing the connection between my mind, my body, my spirit. I think I'm entering the season of life where I just go kind of nuts, becoming one of those people who just believes that their body's a temple. That is really just what I'm going for. I'm just so excited and eager and itching to implement a bunch of healthy practices into my life. I have just been feeling what it feels like to not have them, and I miss it. I miss what it feels like to be eating lots of fresh fruits and veggies all the time. I miss what it feels like to get a good night's rest all the time. Just pretty much everything that we talked about last week. I'm ready for that. And I think that it is very, very challenging because life can be life sometimes, but I think it is so rewarding to prioritize those things. And yeah, I want to value the connection between my mind, my body, and spirit, and just finding balance for all of those things. Just making sure I'm meeting my needs in all my categories. I'm physically healthy, I am mentally well, and my spirit is feeling fulfilled. That is truly what I am going for. And yeah, it's important to me. And I think it should be important to everyone as a human, but maybe it's just the way I say it that makes it very hippie-dippie, but that's fine. Someone said it like that, and that's how it resonated with me, so that's why I'm regurgitating this information out into the universe, the interwebs, hoping that the way that I'm saying it is going to resonate with someone else and help them out in some way, shape, or form. Just kind of a productive, kind series of events, chain of events, whatever it's called. The sayings. Just, if you guessed it, Moving on. The next hippie value I have is creation. I think that art is valuable in all stages, in all forms. I think that there is so much to learn, not only from an artistic product, but the process of how it came to fruition, And I just think that, just that entire creative process is so valuable. I think it is so important, for especially people who consider themselves creatives per se, but I think it's possibly important for just all humans to have this implemented in their life to some degree, some sort of creativity. There's just like a part of our brain that thinks of things and comes up with ideas. And I think it's important to lean into that. And I think it's really important to also step back and appreciate not only the process, but the result of that, which is art in whatever form, shape it may be. And that is something that people might argue about, that art only comes in like a certain set of categories or whatever, but I think you can find art in all things. I think it is more of a mindset rather than like a rule book. And at the end of the day, creation is just something that I value in my life and believe that many other hippies do too. So that's why we're chatting about it today. I think that creation can also be seen in other ways beyond art. I think that like the creation of food, whether that might be, the gardening side of things or the cooking side of things, both of those things are a very beautiful process of something that is just like being created, coming to life. I think that, in a lot of different ways, art is alive, which is super duper cool and just something that holds a lot of value. I also think that, womanhood also kind of comes to mind when I think of valuing creation. Like a woman's body is like built for creating. Haven't decided if I'm going to use that feature or not. But I do think that it is really, really magical that just animals in general are built for creating life as well. Like we were all made for participating in the creation of something in some way, shape, or form, if that makes sense. And at the end of the day, I just value this concept in general. So those are my thoughts. And now we're going to move on to some more thoughts of mine. I think as I have grown and taken on this like hippie persona and whatnot, a lot of it has stemmed from the way I value success, the way I look at success. I think it is really easy to view success as, all the things that you have, all the money you make, the house, the car, the lifestyle, the job, the blah-de-blah-de-blah. And, none of those things hurt. No one can really argue that. But I really don't think that success is about money. I don't think that success is about things. They might be a nice way to like decrease life's stress in different ways, but at the end of the day, I don't want my life and the way I value success to be centered around achieving these things. I think that there is so much more meaning in letting success be measured by the amount of happiness and connection and fulfillment within your life. I think those are the true signs that you are successful at the end of the day. The goal is to have more good days than bad days. The goal isn't to have the most amount of things, the most pieces of paper with like someone's face on it. That's, I don't know, to me that's just like a little ridiculous. And like, don't get me wrong, money is a huge part of our society and the way we live life, and it can be game changing in a lot of different ways. But just because you make a lot of money doesn't mean that you're living a successful life. I don't think so, but that's just me and my hippie-dippie values. So take it or leave it. We're going to go ahead and jump onto the next little chunk focused on hippie-dippie activities and practices, just different ways to practice the hippie ways. What are the hippie ways? The hippie ways as activities, however you want to like frame this, that's what we're talking about next. This is kind of going to jump back into last week's episode, just emphasizing the importance of fresh air and sunshine. I can't get enough of it. Like, I hope you can't either. I hope that you are just spending so much time breathing just the crispiest air and just feeling the sun soak into all the pores on your skin and just are having the best time ever, because I think that's just what we're meant to be doing as humans for the most part. I believe that these things are so beneficial wholeheartedly because of how I feel after I've spent some time in nature, had a little nature day or even just a nature moment. For example, yesterday, my partner and I, we had a nature moment. We spent like just a half day at this cute little park that has some like reservoir lake type things and a lot of different wildlife to look at, ducks, birds, turtles, those types of things. And it was just so wonderful and refreshing to just be sitting outside. The only other people are the people out there trying to hang out in nature, just getting their steps in, walking around this park. And for the most part, you just hear, the ducks splashing as they eat. You hear the turtles falling off the logs as they're just trying to soak up the sun. And there is just something about that makes me feel so recharged. Like, when we got back home, I was so energized, so reinvigorated. I started cleaning the house, I cooked dinner, I was just doing all the things. And not that I can't do those things on other days, I have to. Those are things you just have to do sometimes, but it's the way I felt whenever I did them. I had the energy for them, and it just wasn't a hassle at all. I was just, my cup was full, so I was able to use some of that water in my cup to freaking mop the floors and wipe the counter and make my home a nice tidy space, so to speak. And I can't get over it. Like, recharged is the only way I can really describe that experience. And when you get to see certain views, it really just feels like a spiritual experience being out in nature like that. It is just so cool. And I will definitely talk more about it next week. But for now, we're going to move on to the next little hippie-dippie practice. But as we're spending time in nature, it's also important to make sure that we are respecting nature and just leaving no trace. The goal is to leave it better than you found it. So if you see some garbage, pick it up. If you eat some snacks, hold on to your wrappers. It's really not that hard to just respect the land, the creatures, the whole shebang. If you're listening to my podcast, you probably don't need that lecture, but I feel like if I'm going to be talking about visiting and spending time in nature, visiting nature, spending time in nature, then I should, just throw that disclaimer in there that it's really important to respect those spaces so they can, continue to be enjoyed for years and years and years and years and whatnot. That's what being a hippie is really about, But moving on to the next, hippie practice, I guess I could frame it as just, honoring the natural cycles in life. As I'm reading the notes I made for this episode, I am slightly confusing myself. The words I'm reading make me sound very wise and genius, but I don't exactly remember how I intended to talk about these things. But essentially, when it comes to just honoring the natural cycles in life, it's about recognizing the different ebbs and flows and learning from those patterns, I guess you could say. I think that there are a lot of people out there who have this expectation or this desire to just be happy all the time. I mean, I get caught up in it too. That's a superhuman feeling to just crave that, to want to be chasing that feeling of being happy. But I think it's important to remember that life does have a lot of different ebbs and flows, and it's the lows that make, the highs feel high type of thing. And I think that is a huge part of just honoring the natural cycles of life. There are just going to be some seasons of life where you're going to be kind of down in the dumps or struggling in some sort of way, but that also means that you are learning and growing, and eventually you are going to get to be like practicing all of these things that you have now learned, and they are going to make your life feel better. And that's what's going to help you like ride the highs of life and all of that. You know, the goal is to not just be the calm within the storm, but also appreciate the beauty of the highs and the lows that come from the storm per se, if that makes sense. Or maybe better said, it's about falling in love with the rain that brings you the rainbows. You know, the saying like, only rainbows come after rain, you know, that, blah, blah. First off, I love a good cliche because they've been repeated for a reason. So, you know, rainbows, they come after rain. The flowers, they come after rain. I think, you know, remembering that is important just when you're in the rain, because we all know when it rains, it pours, and it's just tough to be in those positions. You know, remembering that there will be a rainbow after this, there will be flowers after this, and if I could just get to that place where I could also just sit there and be like, and you know, this rain is like uncomfortable, but it's also really beautiful too. That's the goal. That is like the Zen thought goal. And honestly, I'm not even sure anymore if this is like still an activity / practice. It honestly feels more like a value at this point, but it doesn't really matter because I'm just ranting and rambling anyways. But what all of that reminds me of is the video of the blonde girl from Riverdale, Betty Cooper. I think her name is like Lily Reinhardt or something like that. But there's a video of her in an interview at some point, and she's essentially talking about, you know, her thoughts when it comes to the universe and her experience within the universe. And I don't know, ever since I've heard it, I've never stopped thinking about it. Essentially what she's saying is that, you know, like pretend like she's this energy in the universe, and the universe came to her and was just like, hey, do you want to go down on this planet and have X amount of time, and you're going to have like all of these different experiences. You're going to be sad, you're going to be mad, you're going to be happy, you're going to be all of these different things. You're going to feel all the feelings. You know, you can't have just some of it, you're going to have all of it. Do you want to go do that? And she's like, yeah, that would be like really cool. Like that sounds awesome and really beautiful or something like that. Just go check out the video yourself if you want to know, like verbatim. But that's essentially what I took away from it. And I just think it is a really, really beautiful concept to kind of just remember that not only is it okay to be sad sometimes, it's just another beautiful part of the human experience. And I think that learning to appreciate the sadness, learning to appreciate the anger, all the discomfort, all the uncomfortable feelings is the like actual goal key to being happy all the time. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? Like the goal of actually being happy all the time just isn't possible, but the goal of accepting all of the feelings that you feel all the time and being content in that, is that possible? I think so, maybe. I think that would be a really cool place to get to. And I don't know if any of that made sense, but if it did, let me know what you think. But on a side note, since I started talking about Riverdale, I recently rewatched Riverdale because at first, whenever it came out in high school and was super popular, at least when I was in high school, fun fact, my friends and I actually dressed up like the Riverdale characters at some point. Kind of funny. But I only watched the first like season or two, and there were actually a lot. And the whole thing's kind of a mind fuck, I will say, but in like a cool, fun way. And it has encouraged me to start collecting comic books, perhaps. My boyfriend and I would describe us as cool, nerdy people. You know, like we're cool. We're some hippies, some stoners, some outdoorsy people. Like, we're pretty normal and fun, but we are also nerds, which is normal and fun. And all to say, like, there's Harry Potter, Pokemon, Star Wars, all those things I think are super cool. And comic books are another one. I might not be like super duper into superheroes and stuff like that, But as far as like graphic novels go, like I can get into that, a book with a bunch of pictures in it, that's just like two different things to appreciate. That's dual art right there, 2 for 1. And yeah, so I've just been thinking about collecting Archie's comics because that's what Riverdale's based off of. So is like Sabrina the Teenage Witch show, or The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, the like Netflix version, not the like sitcom from like back in the day. I mean, I guess that's also probably based on it, but it's just not as accurate of a representation of the storyline, I think. I don't know. I'm not an expert, but I do want to possibly become one. I find it very interesting. And yeah, I don't see myself nerding out and collecting like DC comic books or Marvel comic books of all the different heroes. And also that's just like too much. Like there's a lot out there, and I need to start smaller. And maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. And Archie's Comics has a lot more than I think there is, but I think it would be a fun place to start dipping my toe into the nerdy realms because they're fun. They're hoot and half. They're just someone else's imagination. Like, how cool is that to spend some time there every once in a while? But anywho, beyond embracing the nerdy life my partner and I are building, we also make hippie-dippie choices and purchases. So that's kind of the next little chunk of thoughts I have to share with you guys today. So I would say that I have a very hippie perspective when it comes to buying like household items or personal care items. Personally, I have very sensitive skin. I've struggled with acne since I was a teenager. Haven't stopped even though I'm not a teenager anymore. They don't really tell you about that. They always talk about how like teens have acne and everything. They don't talk about how as an adult you can still also have acne. It doesn't just like end. It's just maybe different, less intense, but also a very unique experience from person to person. So who's to say? But that's mine. But not just my face, like my whole body has fairly sensitive skin. And since I've switched over to like fragrance-free laundry detergent and pretty much like lotion, everything that has fragrance, I'm just not a fan of. Which fragrance is different than like essential oils, which are very natural for the most part. Fragrance is kind of just more like a chemical composition of a bunch of different smells, and I just find it to be unnecessary. I think it did make a difference in like how my skin felt with like, the different detergents I was using and the extra ingredients that were just put in there for no reason. I think it would be really cool to be one of those people someday who like makes all of those products themselves, DIYs the whole shebang, but I'm not there yet. I think what'll have to come first is being like the gardener homesteader who has all of these plants, and it's like, now what do I do with all of these byproducts I have and all that jazz. But I'm rambling into a different rabbit hole of a life that doesn't even exist yet, but I'm very excited for. Yeah, I also just try to buy like household cleaning products that have like natural fibers. Like my sponges have natural fibers. There's literally a plant called the loofah plant that makes natural sponges and different things like that. But beyond just like household, personal care, cleaning product type stuff, I also make very hippie choices when it comes to the medicine I choose to reach for, at least first. There's Onyx. I think that plant medicines are the original medicine, not the alternative medicine, even though that's what a lot of people think about holistic health. But I'm a very big believer that we as animals on this earth were given everything that we need to be healthy and survive and have all of our needs met from the earth. It's true with our water, it's true with our food, and I think it's true with a lot of other things. I think that at the end of the day, like pharmaceutical medicines are profitable, so that's how that became that. And plant medicines, you can't really patent a plant, something natural that's just like meant to exist, not really created by someone, if that makes sense. This is something I definitely want to learn a lot more about. I was just telling my partner the other day that I would really love to get a book on like herbal plant medicines and just like a guide to different teas and stuff like that, because that is something I've briefly been getting into, you know, just drinking like mint tea if I'm nauseous or something like that, chamomile tea if I feel like I need help sleeping. You know, like these aren't rocket science, revolutionary ideas, obviously. In fact, it's the opposite. It's ideas that have been around for a really, really, really long time, and I simply don't want to overlook them by just listening to what other people might be saying, if that makes sense. But yeah, I would love to learn more about different herbs and teas that I could be using as like replacements for, you know, man-made medicines. But to start, you know, coffee is one that I use daily. I would consider coffee an herbal medicine because it provides you with caffeine, which is a little bit of a stimulant. I know I need it to get through every day. And coffee is a plant at the end of the day. And I think that kind of viewing it like that kind of maybe like softens the blow and the barrier of like thinking about taking other sort of plant medicines as an alternative for a pharmaceutical medicine for different types of things. You know what I mean? Like, just coffee's not intimidating, and that just might be like the gateway drug, literally, to plant medicines. I don't know. Does that make sense? I think so. I would put coffee in there. I would put obviously mushrooms in there. Mushrooms are kind of new it thing. And I think it's really cool. I'm really excited about how they are getting more and more popular. I think that since there are so many different types out there, there are so many different types of benefits that many of them could have. Like, you know, there are the different nootropic mushrooms, which can help with your energy and your focus and different things that you might need assistance with as you're going throughout your day, which I think is really cool, you know, kind of a little vitamin in a way. I would also love to do a deep dive one of these days on mushrooms that contain psilocybin and the tool that that could be for different things that you go about in your life. But today we're just talking about like general topics and ideas. I would also like to do the same thing for cannabis, weed, whatever you want to call it. I'm like afraid to say these things on the internet because I know it can like affect things, but it's also like I want to talk about them because I think it's important to have these types of conversations and to talk about these things. Like, we can't just be like tiptoeing our way around all of these taboo topics all the time. How are we going to learn anything? But I think it's fine if I say it now because I'm just a little baby podcast who's not monetized or anything like that. So should be fine, right? I guess time will tell. But I think that specifically like cannabis, I have learned a lot about it over the past few years, just being involved in the plant sciences and even working within the industry. And it has become a pretty big part of my lifestyle personally. I think it really enhances different spiritual and creative practices that are a pretty big part of my life. You know, my nature days, my creative art sessions. I think that it is a really incredible tool to really just get in those zones of, you know, just either focusing on something or being able to relax and connect with nature. I think it can also be a really great tool to help with sleep, as I kind of talked about, I think in last week's episode, when it comes to little gummies and whatever. See, I was thinking the other day, it feels so nonchalant and appropriate to refer to it as, oh, it's just a little gummy, you know? And I think it's because we've just like changed the form, so it's kind of like detached itself from like the shame that the actual concept surrounding cannabis has, like following it around from just years and years of political mumbo jumbo and all that jazz. And having a windstorm outside. Anywho, I was just thinking the other day that it's so weird that that feels appropriate for me to say here on the podcast, because it's like detached. It's not the plant. It's just a little gummy. Like, we cooked it. It's something that you eat. It's different. You're not smoking it. And like, it is different. It's a different way to consume, which then has different effects versus like eating versus smoking, whatever, which again, we can deep dive into this another day, but I just think it's so interesting how the stigma is just like different, if that makes sense. I don't know. These are just thoughts I have, so I'm sharing them with you here on my podcast. That's all I have for today, folks. Today's maybe a little bit of a shorter episode, mostly because I just wanted to spat out a bunch of different concepts at you, thoughts I've been having, and I'll probably end up doing a deep dive on a lot of these different concepts. So, I don't want to say too much about them. Don't want to spill too many beans today. I just want to maybe lay out a few beans so you come back for more beans. But yeah, being a hippie might not be for everybody, but it's my path in life, and I'm pretty happy with it, and I think I am a happier, healthier human for it. I would love for you to join me for next week's episode, where I kind of deep dive into different grounding practices, journaling, more nature time, yada, yada, yada. It'll be a good time, and I hope to see you there. If you're feeling extra lovey today, it would be super duper helpful if you could follow, like, and or subscribe. Whatever kind of love you feel like giving, I'm ready to accept, Feel free to comment below your favorite hippie-dippie practice to start to get this community. Feel free to comment below your favorite hippie-dippie practice. I want this to be an interactive community. This is a two-way street. At least it can be. It doesn't have to be, but it can be if you want it to be. So that would be cool. You can find more info in the show notes. I've also added a little discount code to my Etsy shop in the show notes. I figured if you're going to be hanging out with me this much over here on the podcast, I might as well give you, the little friends and family discount over at my little Etsy shop if you're feeling like grabbing some sort of digital print. You need a little landscape, nature, something to make your home feel a little more homey. That might be something for you. But yeah, you can go ahead and find that discount code in the show notes as well. I think it's BABE45, so like 45% off if you get 2 pictures, essentially. So yeah, feel free to go ahead and check that out. But until next time, bye babes.